Hello, and welcome to today's show. We are talking today about the 3 keys to high-performing teams that increase your profits. So before we dive in, let's do some quick intros, and now we're going to be talking about bad bosses. We want to know your stories. Pop them down below. All right, so intros. Stephen, over to you.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Stephen Lerman from Chameleon BDS Limited, outsourced business development service. So if you're looking to get in front of more clients, but have that fear of picking up the telephone, don't have the resources to do it internally, or just don't have the time, then please give me a call. I'll be more than happy to have a conversation with you to make those cold calls, generate some leads, and make some appointments and get you in front of more businesses. Sorry.
Great, thank you, Stephen. Jess, over to you.
Good morning, everybody. Recently, I got asked what the difference is between brand design and brand management. So brand design is all about how you look. It's your logo, your fonts, your colours, how you're presenting yourself. Brand management is making sure you're talking to the right people, your message is consistent, your team are all motivated and engaged. Everything else is moving in the right direction to your business's goals. So that's what I do for businesses. I make sure you look good, and I make sure you've also got a strategy and culture, and in your message and your target audience is all spot on as well. If you want to know a bit more about that in more detail, I've got a guide that gives you 5 hacks of improving your own brand. So I'll pop the link to that in the comments.
Great, thank you, Jessica. And if you don't know me by now, my name is Una Doyle. My business is Creative Flow, and I'm a business strategist and coach. My mission is to help business owners to build a business that they could sell tomorrow, but probably don't want to, because it's highly profitable, because it's fun to run, because business owner and their team members are all in creative flow. And of course, you get to make a bigger impact on the world. So if you want to know more about that and how I can show you in just a few minutes how you can double your profits, then comment below or send me a DM and I'll share a video with you showing you how to do that. Okay, so let's dive into today's topic. 3 keys to high-performing teams that increase your profits. Now, I think people know, they just kind of sense that when you've got a high-performing team, that of course it increases your profits. But I want to dive into, before I go into 3 keys, like why this is so important. So I'm going to ask Jess and Stephen to share their examples of what happened when they had somebody who they might have considered a less than stellar boss. And I want to hear your stories too. You know, who was your worst boss? Who's been your best boss? What impact did that have on your performance? Comment below and let us know. So, Stephen, I'm going to start with you.
Oh, okay.
Tell us about your worst boss experience.
Okay, so my worst boss experience was I ended up getting a job in Liverpool, and basically I was the only. They never had a BDM before, and didn't quite know how to handle a BDM. So basically,
BDM is business development manager.
Yeah, business development manager. Yeah. Sorry, sales rep, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So it started out that we were working on clients' premises, and eventually he decided that he wanted his own office. So he rented a managed office in the centre of Liverpool, and he basically said to me, every day that you're not out in front of clients, I want you in the office. Now, I had to drive from Manchester to Liverpool every day, and anyone that's ever driven the M62, that stretch of motorway, the rocket where you get off at Liverpool, is a nightmare, and you probably want to kill yourself before you even started your day, because it's horrendous. And once you get stuck on it, there's no way out. And even though there was no reason for me to be in the office, because I could work from home, because we had no office phones, it was all done on mobiles and laptops. Right. He wanted the control of me being in the office every single day, even though all the consultants were on site. So I think he was very narcissistic and very much a control freak, and wanted me in the office, even though it was costing me money every day to get there. He knew I lived in Manchester. The parking in the centre of Liverpool was horrendous. Basically, in the first 6 months, it cost me £2,000 just to work. And it has a detrimental effect to not only to my well-being, to my performance, because I'm so aggravated. I was so aggravated. by the time I got to the office every day, and also I'd lost like 3 hours of my day there and back in travel time. It was very frustrating. And in the end, it got to the point where I ended up hating getting up in the morning and going to work. And I've never, ever felt like that before. And I never want to feel like that ever again. It was awful. There was no faith, there was no trust, there was no confidence. And at the end of the day, I think I was over 40. I ran an office from a company that was based in America on my own in the UK. I was more than capable of managing my own time, but there was no trust, So at the end of the day, I walked, and it was awful. The 18 months I was there was awful.
And during that 18 months, how do you feel it affected your performance? I mean, I know you said you felt aggravated, and stressed, and probably resentful of the money you were spending needlessly, and also, like, when someone has tight reins on somebody of your ignition profile as well, that can feel very, we like our freedom, right? But how did that show up in sales or team dynamics? Tell me a bit more about that.
So the team dynamic, it was really weird, because even though there was a team of people, the other members of the team were consultants, so accountants that were freelance. They all worked on site, so I was pretty much isolated. Even my boss never came into the office every day. He would work from home, but I had to go into the office just so we could have a presence in the office, even though nobody ever came to see us. So I started to get quite resentful, to be honest. I still did the work, but begrudgingly, because there was nobody there. I couldn't talk to anybody if I had any issues or concerns. He wasn't there, and I just felt isolated, which is the main thing. And I forgot to mention, he monitored when I entered and exited the building as well, because we had key fobs. Right. He would say, "You left at 5 to 5." Okay. Things like that, which it felt like I was at school,
Right. Yeah.
And that has a negative impact. At the end of the day, as an adult, and married, and taking care of a household, family, kids, and whatever, you want to be given that responsibility. You think you've earned that right, that responsibility to manage your own life. And but it felt like a huge backward step taking that role, even though the money was better originally. When I weighed everything else up, it was actually, I should have actually stayed where I was at the time.
Right. So do you feel that your sales were less than if you had been part of a high performing team where trust was a big part of it?
Yeah, I would absolutely say that had an impact, because you start to feel a little bit, as well as being isolated. Well, what's the point? There's nobody to share the wins and the successes with. If you've got a question that's going to tip the balance or the scales one way or the other, there was nobody there at that time. And sometimes I just needed a bit of confirmation or affirmation there and then. And if you've not got that team around you, you can't put anybody on hold, and say, just hang on a second. You've not got anybody there. And at the end of the day, you've got in a team, you generally got people that can think on the fly, that might be able to help you get your point across in a different way, or say something that you've not said. If they're listening to you in the office, on the phone, and they hear you might be struggling a bit, or they might have a different solution, something that you've not thought of, But I just, at the end of the day, it did start to have an impact, and I just felt deflated. So
massive impact to you, your morale, your well-being, potentially as well. But from his point of view, lower sales, and he lost a good member of staff.
I rest my case.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you. Jess, what about you? What was your worst boss experience? And what impact?
I want to show a couple from one extreme to the other. Completely different industries, completely different personalities, different bosses. But one was a very micromanaged environment, rightly or wrongly, whether there was pressure and expectations higher up in the chain, I wasn't aware. But the environment kind of really isolated everyone, because you couldn't feel like you could be part of a culture. There was a lot of expectation and a lot of tracking and a lot of micromanaging. So there was that from that angle. And another angle was, from memory, a boss or a manager kind of being too pally, so being too part of the team. So there was no clear expectations, no clear set roles out for people. And I'm quite a team player, and there was colleagues and people part of that team that took the mickey a little bit with that and kind of took advantage of that. And there were no team morale in that either. So kind of similar outcomes from completely different approaches.
Right. Yeah.
Now, since working in their environments, I've done so much personal development on my own personality and what my strengths and weaknesses are, what motivates me, what demotivates me, and this is like just a perfect case study example of what personally I need. So I know now that I do need that team kind of spirit. I do need that recognition, that kind of inspiration that keeps me going, that energy, that vibe. So it makes complete sense that I didn't fit straight into these, I didn't fit well into these management styles. But yeah, it was interesting how as I was reflecting on it, two completely different opposite end of the spectrums, but very similar results or similar impacts on me personally.
Thank you. And I didn't know what stories Stephen and Jess were going to share, by the way. I knew Jess had some bad experiences, and I think most people have, right? Unfortunately, the number of great bosses versus terrible bosses, I really wish the proportion was the other way around. And the reason for that is, well, there's a few. Okay, so let me talk about the three keys to having high performing teams. And clearly the first one is how people are being led. Okay. You've got to create a culture of ownership. And I'm really interested in what you said, Jess, about, in the Pally boss, there was no clear expectations. So if people aren't even clear on what the vision is and what their role is in their vision, what specifically do they need to do? Do they need to get done? That their part in, kind of the workflow, then there's no accountability. But accountability is also not being micromanaged. There's this lovely balance where people have clarity of expectations. They know what to do. They know how to do it. They have the right tools and resources to be able to do their job, and to be accountable, rather than, when there's true accountability, there is trust. And in fact, it's actually impossible to have real accountability where there isn't trust. Okay. People need to be able to speak up. They need to be able to be vulnerable and ask for help. Like Stephen was saying, well, I might want to ask a question. I had nobody to ask, things from. So having that accountability means you can create a team that are happy to take ownership and to meet their accountabilities. So there's a few things in that. Okay. Like number one, you've got to have the right person in the right seat. So this is key number two. Okay. Right person in the right seat. And that's a lot about, hiring slow, firing fast. And it's not an easy thing to let somebody go. Like I've recently had to let a contractor go. It was not an easy decision, but I had to do it because they weren't a good fit. Of course you need to give people chances, but you can't give them chance after chance after chance. If someone just doesn't have the right skills, or if they aren't a good fit in terms of their profile and what you're wanting them to do. So having real clarity on your roles and who can succeed in those roles is really important. So there's a lot around that in terms of, making sure that you're assessing people as they're being hired, making sure that, do personality profiling, do competence-based interviewing, do behavioral interviewing is often called. And if someone doesn't work out, you've got to let them go. And I've had so many situations where people haven't done that. So there's one client comes to mind who, when they started working with me, they'd had a team member for a number of years, and there was a close personal connection, but that person was not performing, and they actually were costing this person money, not just in terms of their salary, but they were costing them because of mistakes that they made. They'd lost clients as a result of this person. And so, they had to make the decision to let them go. And that has really allowed them to, create the space then to bring in other team members who actually are performing way better. When you've got somebody, if you're stressing out over a team member, then you've really got to look at, are they the right person for the team? So, and there's several things, of course, you've got to look at their skills and their experience, but they also have to have the right attitude, and they have to have they have to have both the capability and the willingness to do what's needed to be done in that role. And sometimes people have the capability, but not the willingness. Or sometimes they have the willingness, but not the capability. And that capability might be because they need more experience, or it might be because actually this role is just not a good fit for that person. But if you don't have the right people in the right seats, your business suffers and they suffer too.
Question.
Yeah.
What about respect as well? Having mutual respect, because for example, sorry.
Can you hear that? Apologies, my fire alarm thing is going off. I think it's
just. Oh, it was mine. So,
start the question again, please, Stephen.
So, what about mutual respect? So, like with Jess, so her boss was like, was that friendly in the team? So there's no respect there, really, is there? Because there's boundaries. You've got to have mutual respect. It's got to flow both ways, right?
See, I don't have an issue with the friendliness of that boss. What I have the issue with is that that person was more concerned about being liked than about getting the work done. You can absolutely be friendly and have, good relationships with your team members. Some of the best teams, they are, like they would say they're like families, but like, good functional families, not your average dysfunctional families. But because there was no expectations, there was no accountability, that's what the issue was. And they didn't put those things in place because I'm guessing here, but they were more concerned about being liked than about actually holding people accountable. And I think this is the thing, is like, as a leader, you have to be prepared to let people go. And the more prepared you are to hold people accountable and let them go if necessary, the less likely it is you're actually going to have to do it.
Okay, thanks.
So, and of course, mutual trust and respect are absolutely vital. There are still some people who believe you've got to perform, you get the best out of people by scaring them. No, that doesn't work. However, they do need to be aware of the consequences of poor performance. And you've got to obviously delve into, well, what are the reasons for this poor performance? So it helps to understand what has somebody in and out of flow, because then you can look at, well, are they a good fit? You want to have a good 70-80% of somebody's role be in flow. It might not always, particularly in smaller business, it might not always be possible to have it 100%. But the closer that you can get to that, the better. And often people understanding who has them in and out of flow means that when they need to do things that aren't in flow, they know, oh, well, it's okay, I feel like this. It's not that I'm stupid. It's just this doesn't come easy to me, but I can be competent at it. And I don't have to do it for that long. So, rather than somebody being in a role where their confidence is just going down and down and down because they keep getting negative feedback because they're not performing appropriately. So the first one around, the first key around creating a culture of ownership, it spreads across all of it because it's so much about the leader themselves. It's about who are they being when they're hiring, when they're reviewing performance. Are they being, micromanaging, wanting to control every little thing? Are they just abdicating and leaving people to do everything to their own devices, but not actually really giving them the clarity that they need? Like, those are two extremes that neither works, as Jess experienced. So, one of the things that really helps with all of this then is key 3, which is having the right human systems to support all of this. So what is your process when you hire? What meeting structure do you have in the business? What kinds of meetings do you hold? How often? How do you run the different meetings? Are people showing up? And meetings are actually, is really interesting. Meetings to me are like a litmus test of how effective a company is and how effective their culture is. Because where people have long drawn out meetings, where things don't get done, they get passed from, oh, well, okay, well, we'll get to this next meeting. They go over time massively. Where people are there who don't need to be there. And maybe they're there because they've been like rewarded by, oh, okay, well, I can't give you a pay rise, and there's no structure in the company to kind of, have you be more effective, and to, feel like you're getting rewarded. But what we're going to do, we're going to, give you a title and have you come to these meetings, but are they even the right person to be there? Do they even want to be there? Is it just a status thing? So there's so much around meetings that's so important. And, really every meeting ought to be looking at accountabilities at different levels. So, strategic meetings are looking at, well, you're setting those goals, you're creating those performance measures, you're solving issues at a high level. Day-to-day meetings are more about, well, what are the issues here? What are the issues that? Apologies. Let me just block somebody who's commenting about dating. No, thanks. That's not what this is about. Different kind of high-performing teams. So, I think when you have the right human systems, it highlights when the leadership is letting things down. Because if you have a system where there's a vision, there's a plan, each role is aligned to that plan, but accountability still isn't happening, that's a people issue. And it's the leader or leaders in the business that are causing that problem. Now, if you don't have those human systems in place, then it's a bit harder to tell. But then quite often when they're not in place, that is also a lack of leadership as well. So yeah, what are your thoughts on those? Jess, I'm going to come to you first.
The meeting one is interesting because, again, I've spoken to so many businesses that have fallen out of the habit of having these catch-up meetings. I've experienced, obviously, with the environments that I've worked in the past, I've experienced long, drawn-out meetings where your pressure's just being built up and you're kind of being drained at the same time. But then also talking to businesses that maybe have got maybe really small team, so they feel like they talk enough through work, kind of in between calls and in between this and between that, and then falling out of the habit of actually having that weekly, monthly, even quarterly get together where you all put all your experiences together and go, I've experienced this, I've experienced that, on a sense of what your customer clients going through and how you can your brand can show up more in them circumstances. But yeah, I think that's a really key one. And also, I was talking to someone not so long ago as well, about how their meetings are run. So again, it's really ironic with you saying that, because you know, someone that I was speaking to wanted their meetings to be a bit more energetic. He was feeling, you know, everyone's not really getting motivated, the morale's kind of low. How can I kind of build it up? And there's all sorts of different ways you can do that as well. You know, making it more energetic, interactive, bringing spirits up in that meeting as well, having it as like almost like your workout for the day, where it just builds that energy
Right.
and gets that motivation and you know, engagement going. So yeah, I think that's a crucial part and a really good one to mention.
Excuse me. Thank you, Jess. I couldn't agree more. You know, if that manager feeling, are they business owner or a manager in the business, by the way?
Manager.
They're manager, right. So that low morale is a big key indicator that there's a lack of clarity, a lack of accountability, and it's showing up in the meetings. So, and the interesting thing is, like, that there's different types of meetings that need to be held in a business, and there's different ways to run each of those meetings. Okay, too much to go into today. And when that doesn't happen, what people then do is they'll go for kind of quick fixes. So they'll maybe go, all right, well, let's have some warm-up games, or, you know, let's do something to try and bring the energy back. But it's just a kind of papering over the cracks. It's not actually getting to the underlying reason why morale is low and why the meetings are long and drawn out and not effective. You know, so whereas really you've got to go back to, okay, well, what part are the leaders playing in this? Do people know what their roles are? Are they being held accountable? Are they actually really addressing issues? I mean, because if issues aren't being addressed in a meeting, why are you having it? You know, you can communicate things on email and on project management systems and task systems and, you know, through documents. But an awful lot of the time, meetings are boring because people are just reporting and they're not actually tackling issues. Tackling issues is what makes meetings interesting. Hey, think of anything you watch on the telly or on the cinema screen. What makes it interesting? Drama. Productive conflict is actually what you want. You want people airing their thoughts and their issues and their proposed solutions and real discussion going on. But a lot of people are so afraid of conflict and they don't have the right kind of trust in place that they're not prepared to have those kinds of conversations.
A great book to listen to if anyone wants to kind of go off this conversation a bit more. I think it's called Powerful, and it's how Netflix's culture is run. I think I might have mentioned it a couple of months ago. But with you saying that, you know, a big thing that she was saying was she wants people that will challenge. You know, obviously, you know, there's a reason and a way to do it, but she wants people that will kind of step up and go, no way, why don't we do it this way? Because this seems more effective. This seems more efficient for what I can do. And she can be like, amazing, that's great, and be part of it. So yeah, it's a good one.
I've heard a lot of bosses say, well, you know, I've told my team they're empowered, but they don't act like it. And the reason they don't act like it is because these 3 keys aren't in place. And they might be the wrong people as well. But you know, they're not going to be all the wrong people. I think, you know, it's interesting. I think, was it Peter Drucker, maybe? I might have got that wrong, but I think it was Peter Drucker that said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And so that first key, if you know, you could have the right people in place and you could have human systems in place, but if you haven't created that culture of ownership, then, you know, the right people will leave and the systems are not going to, there's nothing there to, it'd be very hard to build them properly, actually, if you haven't got the clarity of vision, if you don't have the, you know, the strategy and the plans to kind of base those roles and accountabilities off. So everything fits together with it. So I'd love to hear your experiences, folks. You know, pop them in comments. We'll come back, answer any questions that you have. I'd love to hear your stories about your best bosses and your worst bosses, and what impact did that have on your performance. I've seen it myself where team members have gone, like, they buy into the vision of my company, and we love working together, and they go the extra mile because of that. So if you want to create that in your business and have those high performing teams, you've got to put those three keys in place. And I'm not saying it's easy, but it's worthwhile doing. And actually, I think the transformational journey that us as business owners go through in putting these things in place helps our growth as well as the growth of the business. Which, I know, that's something that's of interest to me. It might not be to you, but it is to me anyway.
Culture, especially, culture, not only how can you get your team and everyone else kind of motivated and engaged, but how can you get yourself motivated and engaged? How can you get yourself excited to get out of bed every morning and actually build that morale? Because if you're having to lead in this way, you're having to make sure that you're looking after yourself as well. So yeah, that culture and that vision and what it is that you want out of your team, what it is that you want out of life, and how can you build that into that working environment. It not only will just help with your team, but your goals, like you say, you're planning your strategies, your own mental and well-being. So yeah,
for sure.
I just wanted to add something. You were talking about sometimes people are promoted, and then for whatever reason, it might be the wrong reason. They can't be given a pay rise, but they're a title, and they end up taking control of a team in a different way, and they may not be the right person. They may not deliver the messages that need to be delivered in the most appropriate manner. I remember some guy in a different company I used to work for, was really good at one particular job. I think he was head of the bid management team. But when we all got together for a meeting, I mean, his interpersonal skills were awful. I mean, he ruled with an iron fist, and you don't get the best out of people, waving that stick, do you? People aren't going to be motivated and empowered to go and do the job properly. I mean, we all got publicly berated, and which was a wrong environment for that meeting. We weren't there it wasn't the reason we were there for that meeting, but right. So the rest of us that weren't affected by what he was saying just felt deflated, and the meeting wasn't the right environment. So when you've not got the right people in place to deliver the messages that you want delivered, you can end up taking backward steps, don't you? So the team becomes completely dysfunctional.
Definitely. And I think there is, people want, generally speaking, people want promotions. They want to move forward in their careers. And there's a real tendency for those promotions to come with a team. But not everybody is cut out to lead a team, to be the best at that. Now, sometimes you can get those, if you think the ignition compass and the more introverted analytical people, a lot of wise fuel, if they're leading other wise fuel people, then they'll love a boss who actually not necessarily micromanages, but who pays a lot of attention to the detail, because they're like that too. The challenge comes when you got that micromanaging boss who, wants people who are not like that to kind of, to kind of overdo the level of detail or not report in the ways that work best for them. I mean, sometimes the more extroverted people, they do need structure, and of course the bigger a company is, the more structure it tends to have. And that's the other thing about putting these three keys in place, is that you're able to scale without becoming bureaucratic. So, because the bureaucracy in so many companies is what kills morale and kills them being able to do anything, because they're not able to make change happen. And things end up happening which are just not common sense, and people are just like, well, this is stupid, but I have to do it anyway, or I'm not able to do this even though it would make sense. So I think there is a balance, but I think part of it is because there's a status and people want the status of being a manager. So I think one of the things, like as companies grow, you need to find ways of rewarding people that are rewards they want and that allow people to be more and more in flow, not end up being promoted out of flow. Okay, and sometimes that's about money or other kinds of rewards. Sometimes, like in companies like Netflix, you know, and Facebook, and you know, these kind of bigger companies, quite often it's about you get to work on an exciting project, and that's what people are more interested in. You know, I mean, once you get to a certain level of income, then you know more money actually doesn't tend to motivate you. You know, generally speaking, people want to do interesting work. You know, they want to do work that's fun. That you know, and that's the thing. You know, when Mihai, oh, I don't know how to pronounce his surname. Apologies, Chisensky, something like that. He when he wrote the book, you know, Flow and Creativity, he interviewed all the top performers around the world, and that was what he, you know, the conclusion was they didn't do it for money, they didn't do it for fame, they didn't do it for recognition. They did it because they just loved doing the work. And you can build a team of people like that and allow them to do it and support them in doing it, then you're going to have a high performing team. So, Stephen, what's been most significant about our conversation here today for you?
Excuse me, it's coughing, mate. It's the having the human systems in place, you know, for meetings, you know, having the right people lead the meetings, having the meetings for not for meeting's sake, but to deliver key messages, and having the right people in the meeting, not just trying to deliver multiple messages because you've got you might have the wrong team members there, and you know, and then the meeting just gets diluted, and so yeah, having the human systems in place for meetings.
Great, thank you. Jess, what about you? What's the most significant for you in our conversation today?
The personality profiling, you know, really understanding what people's strengths and weaknesses are. Even just going back to, you know, them kind of rewards, and it doesn't always have to be money, it can be something else. Something that I'm even reflecting on to help myself within my own business is I do like to have these rewards, and if they're too far between, I lose momentum, I lose engagement, I lose motivation. So I'm kind of just, you know, thinking for myself, how can I keep myself engaged by giving myself these little wins, you know, in between the big ones. So yeah, understanding your personality profile yourself and also the people that are in your team, that's definitely the biggest takeaway I'd recommend.
Fantastic. Oh, we want to hear yours too. Pop them in the comments, and we look forward to seeing those. Well, we'll be back here same time next week. By the way, apologies, there was no show or notification of no show last week. I was on holiday and some various things happened that meant we weren't able to have the show. But we're here next week and every other week in the run up to Christmas. Next week, I think we're talking about getting your products retail ready. So we look forward to hearing from Jess on that. Okay, we will say bye for now. See you next week.
Bye for now.
Bye,
See you next week.